Eventually, the Arab states will rise against Israel. They don't like Palestinians, but they hate the Jews more. It won't be like 1967. The rest of the world will see by then what the Israelis do to us. They won't help when Egypt and Syria attack. Even Jordan. Israel will cease to exist. What?
This is a dream. You can't take back a country you never had.
You sound like a Jew.
Fuck you, I'm the voice inside your head telling you what you already know. You people have nothing to bargain with. You'll never get the land back. You'll all die old men in refugee camps waiting for Palestine.
We have a lot of children. They'll have children, so we can wait forever. And if we need to, we can make the whole planet unsafe for Jews.
You kill Jews, and the world feels bad for them and thinks you are animals.
Yes. But then the world will see how they've made us into animals. They'll start to ask questions about the conditions in our cages.
You are Arabs. There are lots of places for Arabs.
You're a Jew sympathizer. All you Germans, you're too soft on Israel. Well, you give us money, but you feel guilty about Hitler. And the Jews exploit that guilt. My father didn't gas any Jews.
Tell me something, Ali.
What?
Do you really miss your father's olive trees? Do you honestly think you have to get back all that nothing? That chalky soil and stone huts? Is that what you really want for your children?
It absolutely is. It will take 100 years, but we'll win. How long did it take the Jews to get their own country? How long did it take the Germans to make Germany?
And look how well that worked out.
Don't know what it is not to have a home. That's why you European Reds don't get it. You say it's nothing, but you have a home to come back to. ETA, ANC, IRA, we all pretend we care about your international revolution, but we don't care. We want to be nations. Home is everything.
Theodore Herzl, the founder of the Zionist Congress, said in his book, The Jewish State, "The common people have not, and indeed cannot have, any historic comprehension. They do not know that the sins of the Middle Ages are now being visited on the nations of Europe." In the wake of the Davidic monarchy's demise, the Jewish people endured centuries of adversity, punctuated by fleeting moments of liberation and benevolence. How does one gauge the threshold of resilience in the face of relentless mistreatment? From an outsider's perspective, as a non-Jew, a goyim, it is observed that they were once regarded as the chosen ones, yet were relinquished of this title and have since borne the weight of retribution. And now, weary of this plight, they yearn to seize control of their destiny, all the while acknowledging that God orchestrates our fate. They recognize the futility of challenging a higher power, yet their resolve persists, even if it entails sacrificing themselves and others. Such is the essence of the Zionist ideal. I will not only take a deep dive into Zionism, but into the world that created the idea. And to reassure you, I'm not a bigot. I do not believe the Protocols of Zion came from the first or of any Zionist council, nor do I see it as a reliable text. It seems to be of consistent knowledge that the Jews endured their worst times in Europe since their first migrations into the European realm. If you do not believe me, then walk with me down this trail, starting with a few instances through the centuries to suffice. The fall of Rome did not end Jewish persecution, but only continued through the Gothic empires, such as the Visigoth Empire. With the laws of the Liber Judiciorum, which was an extension of Roman law, they devoted sections specifically on the Jews. In the intricate tapestry of history, the kings of old wielded their power to enforce laws with differing intensity. Among them, the Visigoth king Sisebut, in the year 612 AD, inflicted forced conversions upon the Jews, subjecting them to lashings. Even during his reign, his cruelty was deemed excessive, evoking disapproval even from figures within the Christian clergy such as Isidore, Archbishop of Seville. Through the shifting tides of time, the Jewish community under the Visigoths experienced alternating periods of persecution and respite, spanning from Sisebut to Chintila to Ervig. Persecutions were rampant during the early and later Crusades as well. In England, during the reign of King Edward I, he sanctioned the Jews year by year. In 1275, he made a statute on Jewry, saying,
"Since the king has seen various evils and the disinheriting of the good men of his land by the usuries, lending money at interest of Jews made in time past, and that various sins have followed thereafter, and although he and his ancestors have received much benefit from the Jewish people in all time past, the king has ordained and established that from this day forward no Jew shall lend anything at usury. Each Jew, after he turns 7 years old, shall wear a badge on his clothes, that is to say, in the form of 2 tables joined, of yellow felt, of the length of 6 inches, and of breadth 3 inches, and that each one, after he shall be 12 years old, pay 3 pence yearly at Easter of tax to the king, for both women and men."
And in 1290, the Jews were told to leave, depicted in his letter to a sheriff, saying,
"The king to the sheriff of Gloucester has prefixed to all the Jews of his realm a certain time to pass out of the realm. He wills that they shall not be treated by his ministers or others otherwise than has been customary. He orders the sheriff to cause proclamation to be made throughout his bailiwick, prohibiting anyone from injuring or wronging the Jews within the said time. He is ordered to cause the Jew to have safe conduct at their cost, when they, with their chattels which the king has granted to them, direct their steps towards London in order to cross the sea."
Every part of Europe that was involved with the Crusades, anyone not Christian, or even a different sect, would face discrimination sooner or later. Jews were obviously one of them. They faced many events like the Rhineland massacres of 1096. It is said that
900 years ago, Crusaders passing through the Rhineland on their way to Jerusalem attacked Jews in towns throughout the region surrounding Heidelberg. Many Jews were killed or converted to Christianity, and many took their own lives in order to avoid baptism. The events often presented as the first instance of an anti-Semitism that would henceforth never be forgotten. As Arno Meyer put it in his study of the Final Solution, the attack on the Jews in 1096 set a disastrous precedent, depositing a fatal poison in the European psyche and imagination. The First Crusade massacres emerge in such scholarship as a focal point in a narrative of Jewish history that asserts the identity of past and present suffering, and that finds its coherence in a teleology of escalating persecution, leading to the Holocaust and to Zionist redemption.
this began an aliyah, or ascent going up back to the Holy Land, as shown in the Shevet Yehuda, Scepter of Judah, 1550, written by the Spanish Jewish historian Solomon Ibn Verga. Verga also notes that in 1211 CE, 300 French and English rabbis immigrated to the Holy Land.
The year 171, 1211, moved the name to the rabbis of France and England to march in full Jerusalem. There were more than 300. The king honored them much, and synagogues and madrasas were built there. Also the high priest, our teacher Jonathan HaKohen, marched there.
The Holy Roman Empire between 1625 to 1670 banished the Jews from Vienna.
As shopkeepers, the Jews saw every cancelled claim as a step closer to the end of the road. The guilds of bakers, butchers, fishermen, and shoemakers were already complaining about the loss they had suffered as a result of the depopulation of the Jewish Vorfita. But those of Vienna openly declared through the moon of their town clerk that they would not rest as long as one Jew remained in the city. Credit failed, trade came to a standstill, and business dealings with the provinces came to an end. No exceptions were made after the first days of August. There were no Jews to be found in Vienna.
There was also the Jewish oath. Oath more Judaico, rooted in anti-Semitism, was intentionally humiliating, painful or dangerous oaths Jews were required to take in European courts of law until the 20th century. They varied amongst each country and time period, from the Byzantine Empire to the German Reich, but all entailed to distinguish the Jews from the population and humiliate them, like the Frankfurt Oath used in Germany in 1392. By the time Zionism was in motion, the Dreyfus Affair ensued. In November 1894, Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a young French artillery officer of Alsatian Jewish descent, was convicted of treason and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 1896, evidence came to light identifying a French army major named Ferdinand Walsin Esterhazy as the real spy. To grasp the backdrop of Jewish experiences in Europe, one must understand their trials, and while challenges existed in Muslim empires, they were especially pronounced in Europe. These adversities shaped their migrations, giving rise to two distinct cultures, the Western and Eastern European Jew.
The Eastern Jewish cultural group had become originally closely related to a political liberation movement. Even as this visibly developed into an aggressive nationalism which excluded other nationalities, something of the former concept of a peaceful coexistence of various nationalities in the same state territory remained in the minds and lives of many Jewish people. The Western Jews, on the other hand, much more torn in their cultural characters, lived to a large extent in countries which participated in the international imperialist partition of the world as powerful national states. This had a marked influence on their understanding of the terms nation, nationalism, and international politics. Thus, they sought the path of rapidly constructing a state by exploiting the international power struggle. All things considered, it was no wonder that cultural misunderstandings arose between the Eastern and Western Jews.
In an era dominated by imperialism and the rise of nationalism, Zionism took root. This was a time when nations, driven by a sense of superiority, sought dominion over others. Such movements often transitioned from purely nationalistic to ethnically charged pursuits. As imperialism grew, so did the seeds of Marxism. Faced with global animosity, the Jews absorbed the hatred and mirrored it back.
Zionism was an answer to the fact that the Messiah had not yet come again, but that the Jewish misery desperately required relief. It was an answer to secularization and tolerance, to emancipation and liberalism, to industrialization and impoverishment, to the change in the patterns of life.
Nathan Birnbaum introduced the term in his newspaper, Selbst-Emancipation, in 1890. Birnbaum played a significant role in the First Zionist Congress and held the position of Secretary General. However, ideological differences arose between him and Herzl. He began questioning the political objectives of Zionism, emphasizing the cultural and national essence of Judaism. He parted ways with the Zionists, advocating for Jewish cultural autonomy, and championed Yiddish as the foundation of Ashkenazi Jewish culture, and organized the Conference on Yiddish in Czernowitz, Bukovina, 1908. His perspective evolved, leading him to embrace traditional Judaism and relinquish his materialistic and secular outlook, particularly preceding World War I. He even served within the upper ranks of the anti-Zionist group Agudath Israel, becoming a staunch opponent of the movement until death, reducing his space in Zionist textbooks.
In contrast to Herzl, Birnbaum did not see Zionism as a mobilization of Western European powers to save the Eastern Jews. For him, Zionism was a cultural movement which should help the Western Jews to find their ethnic identity and urge the Eastern Jews to modernize. After the Second Zionist Congress, Birnbaum turned from Zionism and dedicated himself to Eastern Judaism.
The man credited to bringing Zionism to the fold is Theodore Herzl, but before him and even before the coining of the term, there were movements and individuals promoting for their return to Palestine since their first exile. During modern times, this urge became the spiritual foundation of Zionism. For instance, in the Polish city of Thorn, Rabbi Zevi Hirsch Kalischer shared a similar religious conviction. As early as 1836, he urged Amschel Rothschild to acquire land in Palestine, and eventually became a member of the First Jewish Colonization Society of Germany, urging the poor Jews of Eastern Europe to leave persecution, being financially supported by the more assimilated and wealthier Western Jews. Intriguingly, a Niles Registry entry from 1829 reveals that the Rothschilds had already commenced their land acquisitions. The Rothschilds would continue to be in contact with Theodore Herzl and other Zionists to help acquire land and invest in the settlements.
There is a report that the Rothschilds have purchased Jerusalem. We see nothing improbable that, in the pecuniary distress of the Sultan, he should sell some part of his dominions to preserve the rest, or that the Rothschilds should purchase the ancient capital of their nation. They are wealthy beyond desire, perhaps even of avarice, and so situated, it is quite reasonable to suppose that they may seek something else to gratify their ambition that shall produce most important effects. If secured in the possession, gather a large nation together, soon to become capable of defending itself and having a wonderful influence over the commerce and condition of the East. Baron Rothschild's was proceeding to Constantinople, and a second rebuilding of the temple is not among the most strange things expected in these strange times by some of the Jews.
The first Proto-Zionist was Moses Hess, with his groundbreaking work, Rome and Jerusalem, the Last Nationality Problem in 1862, before the coinage of the term Zionism, embraced Rabbi Kalischer's teachings, invoked a call for both the Jewish nation and religion to embrace a national spirit, and envisioned the establishment of a Jewish national state being the catalyst to the Messianic apocalyptic era. He defied conventional boundaries and spiritually ushered forth the essence of the Jewish self-determination that we see today. Born in 1812 of a traditional Jewish family in the Judengasse of Bonn. Like other Jews in the Rhineland, his family had experienced emancipation into a liberal capitalist society under Napoleon, only to have their rights taken away by Prussia. Herzl was not aware of his work, but when he later read them, deemed Moses Hess as the pioneer for the movement, saying, "Since Spinoza Jewry has brought forth no greater spirit than this forgotten, faded Moses Hess." Probably the biggest reason he is not known as well is due to him being colleagues with Karl Marx and helping him and Engels write the famous Communist Manifesto. He was a Marxist who mixed socialist and messianic ideas, seeing the resemblances in Judaism already. Rome and Jerusalem was a response to the growing nationalism of Prussia and the Poles wanting to break and have their own nation. And with the Damascus affair, Hess understood that Jewish hate would not subside, promoting his ideas being deemed as the first German socialist. I will be using excerpts from the books Love, Death, and Revolution in Central Europe by Peter C. Caldwell, The Making of the Manifesto by Rob Beamish, and Hess's Rome and Jerusalem to express his change in ideology leading up to the first modern Zionist texts. Many people believe, as I did, that the Communist Manifesto was created by two men, Engels and Marx, but was actually the collective effort of people trying to understand the prevailing social conditions so that they could change them, it is noted.
Unable either to stay in France or to move to Germany, Marx decided to emigrate to Brussels. Marx associated with other exiled socialists from across Europe, including Moses Hess, Karl Heinzen, and Joseph Weidemeyer. Moses Hess and Engels were his neighbors, while Hermann Krieg, Wilhelm Wulff, George Wirth, and other socialists lived nearby. Although the new League's members shared certain basic ideas, they embraced a wide variety of socialist or communist beliefs and positions, and there was considerable debate. The League commissioned Weitling's Mankind as It Is and As It Ought to Be, which served as the League's first coherent theoretical statement as a communist manifesto. Hess argued that the true human would be at one with other humans. He or she would be part of a harmonious species being. Like Feuerbach, Hess sought to ground humans in the material world. As the context changed and a new radical left formed, he broke with both Judaism and Christianity in the name of secular redemption. What Hess noted in 1837 as the central problem of Judaism, its combination of a universalizing monotheism with a particularizing nationalism, did indeed mark his work over the entirety of his life. Hess's work lies in a restless, often dilettantish search for a new movement, which would give meaning to the entire course of history, identifying nationalism as the key to the realization of human potential. Hess explicitly viewed himself as a prophet or apostle in the mid-1830s. While he ceased to make such a mighty claim in later works, it nonetheless marked all of them.
Hess noticed Judaism was primed for the imperialism and nationalism of the age, ready to embrace the zeitgeist. It is the most nationalistic of all religions, with Zionism being a secular process of historical development with sacred intent.
Hess proclaimed the coming of a new kind of unity of God and politics, a theocracy founded on the revelations of Spinoza. Hess's New Jerusalem assumed the unity and harmony of society, the end of egoism. Elimination of inheritance would mean the end of historical rights that cemented inequality into place. Other reforms would bring about a qualitatively new society. Women would now receive the same education as men. Free monogamous love would replace the authoritarianism of existing marriage law and arranged marriages, and the state would educate the young, breaking down the inequalities related to access to education. In short, Hess asserted, the state will replace the family. Laws, rights, formal protections of the individual would no longer determine the shape of a state, but rather the essential coherence and harmony of the whole. Which perfidy can take place in a commonwealth where everything is open and public, where free judgment is being recognized as the element of life? In this new world, true religion, the knowledge of God revealed in the holy history, is the only foundation of state, the basic law, out of which the other laws follow. A new Sparta, one where individuals did not merely renounce economic goods, but also found joy in an ennobled life. Instead, the state should be religious in the sense that it promoted religion, but the religion it promoted should be universal and stand above all mere confessions. This state would therefore not be neutral or indifferent to society. It would have the job of ensuring that no doctrine pernicious to the community arises. In 1842, in an article for the Rheinische Zeitung, Hess still defended a strong, centralized state as the institution for educating the people. The state should still act coercively through laws to offer protection against antisocial, egoistic tendencies and should operate positively to promote the cultivation of the individual, construed as true freedom. But by the mid-1840s, God, state, and money were all to be smashed by a revolutionary humanity, reconciliation of individual with humanity as a whole in social harmony. He helped to found the short-lived Rheinische Zeitung. His financial backers, however, found him too radical to serve as its editor and appointed in his place the apparently less radical Karl Marx. By the end of 1842, Hess had drawn Engels into the new communist camp. He worked with Engels and Marx on the German ideology, then returned to Cologne, as Hess established himself as one of the leading German radicals of the Wehrmachts. In Hess's interpretation, the human knew itself immediately in direct experience and knowledge of its own essence as ego in humanity. Hess's political position then replicated Feuerbach's call for the transformation of religion into anthropology, declaring that anthropology next had to become socialism, social practice, if the immediate unity of human with human essence, with species being, was to be achieved. Religion that was no longer a religion, but rather pure, unmediated self-worship. The next step was to criticize the worldly basis of theological consciousness, which Hess found in money. If God was in fact accumulated spiritual humanity, the point where all spiritual goods like love and justice flowed together outside of humanity, then money represented accumulated human labor. In the current social world, humans carried out all work in isolation from one another. The product of labor was only accessible as private property, which was by its very nature inauthentic because it was enjoyed on the level of the individual human animal, not the human in conscious harmony with humanity. Marx, Engels, and the true socialists in Westphalia all adopted some variety of Hess's formulation as they sought to organize a new movement. But in 1845 to 46, Hess, Marx, and Engels broke with what they came to term true socialism.
This is where and when his thoughts inspired Karl Marx's view of religion. The line, "Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people."
Hess's relationship with Marx suffered mortal blows from Marx's authoritarian tendencies within the German communist community in Brussels, even as they remained close in political and social thought. Hess also adopted Marx's understanding of economics. In October and November 1847, Hess published a series of articles under the title "Consequences of a Revolution of the Proletariat," which had become an organ of the new federation of communists around Marx and Engels, and foreshadowed the Communist Manifesto, which appeared a few months later. Not only were Hess's specific proposals similar to those of the Communist Manifesto, a progressive tax, an end to inheritance, a national educational system, but Hess also asserted that the precondition of an authentic social revolution would be a proletariat reduced to selling its labor as a commodity.
As the years went by, leading him to Proto-Zionism, it is noted that
a popularized Spinoza also runs like a red thread through Hess's work. In light of Hess's search of an order to the universe, The turn to Jewish nationalism and racial thought in the last 15 years of Hess's life cannot be surprising.
Hess writes of instances that
every Jew has within him the potentiality of a Messiah, and every Jewess that of a Mater Dolorosa.
Hess also articulated differences in race, using racial arguments to try to turn them around into affirmations, writing that
the Jewish race is one of the primary races of mankind that has retained its integrity. The Jewish race, which was so hard-pressed and almost destroyed by many nations of antiquity, would have disappeared long ago in the sea of the Indo-Germanic nations, had it not been endowed with the gift of retaining its peculiar type under all circumstances and of reproducing it. If Judaism owes its immortality to the remarkable religious productivity of the Jewish genius, this genius itself owes its existence to the fertility of the Jewish race. The Jewish race, throughout the world, possesses the ability to acclimatize itself more than all other races. The pious Jew is above all a Jewish patriot. The new Jew who denies the existence of the Jewish nationality is not only a deserter in the religious sense, but is also a traitor to his people, his race, and even to his family. A Jew belongs to his race, and consequently also to Judaism, in spite of the fact that he or his ancestors have become apostates. The converted Jew remains a Jew no matter how much he objects to it. At present, there is but little difference between the enlightened and the converted Jew.
Historians of Hess note the contradictory words and life he lived, describing that
In short, Hess did not advocate a strict, formal orthodoxy. The form served only to support a political search for a lever to move world history forward. All the talk of Jewish traditions, of Jewish forms, of the Jewish religion, then, seemed to be reduced to a political proposition. The Jews formed a physiological race different from other races in Europe, and that it should assert itself in history again. The point was not merely to devise a pragmatic response to the continued oppression and prejudice against Jews, but to further the progress of the world. Just as his socialist ally in Germany, Ferdinand Lassalle, found that moment in 1863 with the possibility of a new, strong imperial Prussia under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck, Hess found that moment in the strong leadership of the French nation by Napoleon III. Imperialism and racially oriented nationalism, then, would be the motors of a progressive history. Against Marx, Hess asserted that the race struggle is the primary one and the class struggle secondary.
amidst the backdrop of Middle Eastern modernization and Europe's burgeoning interest in the region, the Jews perceived an opportune moment to take action and initiate mass settlement in the land of Israel. Following in Kalischer's footsteps, Hess proposed that voluntary donations could fund land acquisition, while Eastern European Jews would unite to study agriculture and establish their presence there. Moreover, Jews would assume the role of watchmen skilled in warfare, safeguarding against Arab incursions. Hess eagerly embraced the words of an enthusiastic Frenchman, Ernest La Haran, who wrote The New Eastern Question, and championed the assistance in facilitating the Jewish return, explaining that
what European power today would oppose the plan that the Jews, united through Congress, should buy back their ancient fatherland? Who would object if the Jews flung to decrepit old Turkey a few handfuls of gold and said to her, "Give me back my home and use this money to consolidate the other parts of your tottering empire"? For we will not be eternally engaged in war. The time must come when this wholesale massacre, usually accompanied by the booming of cannon, will be condemned by humanity, so that the nation which desires conquest in addition to commerce will not dare to carry out its designs. European industry has daily to search for new markets as an outlet for its products. We have no time to lose. The time has arrived when it is imperative to call the ancient nations back to life so as to open new highways and byways for European civilization. You will come to the land of your fathers crowned with the crown of age-long martyrdom, and there finally you will be completely healed from all your ills. Your capital will again bring the wide stretches of barren land under cultivation. Your labor and industry will once more turn the ancient soil into fruitful valleys, reclaim the flat lands from the encroaching sands of the desert, and the world will again pay its homage to the oldest of peoples. You have contributed enough to the cause of civilization and have helped Europe on the path of progress to make revolutions and carry them out successfully. Our hearts will beat fast, and our armies will stand by you, ready to help. You will become the moral stay of the East. You have written the book of books. Become, then, the educators of the wild Arabian hordes and the African peoples. Let the ancient wisdom of the East, the revelations of the Zend, the Vedas, as well as the more modern Quran and the Gospels, group themselves around your Bible. They will all become purified from every superstition, and all will proclaim alike the principles of freedom, humanity, peace, and unity. You are the triumphal arch of the future historical epoch, under which the great covenant of humanity will be written and sealed in your presence as the witnesses of the past and future.
Hess's idea of being an extension of Europe under the protection of Europe was emulated by Herzl and the Zionist Council, with Hess writing,
For Jewish colonization to India and China, there is no lack either of Jewish laborers or of Jewish talent and capital. Let only the germ be planted under the protection of the European powers, and the tree of a new life will spring forth by itself and bear excellent fruit.
Many of these ideas echoed through the Basel program proposed at the First Zionist Council, as well as within the youth and settlement agricultural programs, saying that
Labor was the process of working out, or of working one's way out into the world and then back to oneself.
at the end of the day,
Hess's own life did not conform to these sentimental images. He certainly did not marry a woman from the Jewish community, but rather Sibylle, who was apparently involved in a number of scandalous affairs. Hess stated that the Jewish nation deplores a childless union, but he himself produced no children. Finally, his fond reminiscences of his Jewish upbringing in 1862 contrast sharply, where he recalled being beaten black and blue over his Talmud lesson. Indeed, Hess spent many years as a revolutionary, rejecting the conservative forms of Judaism, which he had experienced in Bonn, as well as Christianity. It is not surprising that a revolutionary would aim at crushing the old world of mere forms.
Hess's ways about bringing these ideas into fruition are almost to a T the same as Herzl and the First Zionist Conference. No wonder once Herzl read his works deemed Hess as the precursor, the founder of Zionism. A secular Marxist Jew created Zionism. The path of Zionism of the Jewish state of Israel was destined down the path of Marxism and socialism we see consume Western society today. It would have been supported by Western society like today and used to control the Middle East, even more than today. For the next video, we will talk about what Palestine was like under the Ottomans, the effect of the Messianic Age on Zionism, Theodore Herzl, and the First Zionist Congress. If you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe.